Good evening. I'd like to call together the Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is December 18th, 2019, and we are in the Raymond Broadcast Modular, and I would ask Mr. Howell.
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jenny Cummings.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean. Jenny Butler.
Here.
And Molly Cochran.
Here.
Great.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments to the agenda tonight.
Good, thank you. Okay, now is the time for public input, an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Nobody is jumping up, so I would like to welcome our Wyndham High School student, Molly Cochran, who is joining our board today. We're very excited. Molly is a Raymond resident and is a junior at Wyndham High School.
Nice.
That's great, and I know you will have some great input. Okay. Now I'd like to ask Bill Hansen, the Director of Facilities for RSU 14, to come up and talk about competitive energy services.
Great. How about while I'm starting this, that's the HDMI connection, right? Charlie's going to his presentation with that. So, pleasure to have Charlie Agnew with us today from Competitive Energy Services. We've been working with Competitive Energy now. I was checking, Charlie, I think it's getting close to 9 years for our energy procurement. Before that, we were with Maine Power Options. And what Competitive does for us is they actually negotiate with many different vendors bid pricing for our electricity. And we've had some real success over these 8 years of time as we work to get the best price we can for that utility. What we're going to talk about tonight is a really awesome opportunity, not only from the standpoint of saving the district money, but also potentially providing a very green solution for our energy procurement, which is, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie and let him talk to you about that. But this meeting's purpose is just to give you the information as to what we're talking about. We are working with Drummond and Woodson to go through the legal contracts. We understand that portion of it. We're doing our due diligence just to understand the whole project and what the upside and downsides are for the district. But based on what we've seen so far, I only see upsides for us. We can save money and also have we really would get into a green renewable energy for our facility. So with that, Charlie, I'll let you take the stage.
Okay. Thanks, Bill, and thank you all for having me tonight. So yeah, just by way of a little background, there were a couple of bills signed in the legislature this spring, state legislature, that one first amended the Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS, which is essentially establishes a minimum amount of renewable electricity that's part of our state's electric portfolio or grid. So this is what every consumer, residential, commercial, or industrial buys in terms of the electricity supply. And And I can just speak to these couple things. Well, actually, we have some slides about that.
Okay. Do you want me to shut it down to try to, hang on. How do I
leave it plugged in.
leave it plugged in, but shut it down?
Yeah,
Okay.
restart it.
I don't know how to restart this one. Do you want to restart?
We had it for a second then, and then it lost.
I can say some Chaucer now if you would like.
Did we never have it, or?
No, it's just.
Oh, interesting.
That's okay.
classic restart. Oh boy. Up to date too. Yeah, she's doing well. Thank you.
This is the quietest that it has been. I think I'm going to like the zen of this right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is fairly basic information. Just while we're getting booted up here, I can continue to just speak to what's happened this spring, and then we should be up and running by the time this computer updates and comes online. So I apologize for that. But one bill, LD 1494, was an act to renew the state's RPS. And as it stands today, all of our electricity supply in the state of Maine, 40% of that comes from renewable energy as it is. 30% of that 40 from hydro and biomass facilities, 10% from solar and wind that has been built since 2005. And LD 1494 doubles that today's 40%, increases that to 80% by 2030. So over the course of the next decade, our electricity grid, doing nothing under this state law, will drive more and more renewables coming into the electric mix, if you will. So that's a great thing. Even if the district did nothing, there is going to continue to be cleaner and cleaner electricity as a result of this bill. The unfortunate side effect of that is there is some cost to those renewables, and we've projected some cost increases over that 10-year period, order of magnitude that could add a penny per kilowatt hour after 5 years, and as much as 2 pennies per kilowatt hour by the end of that decade timeline. So this is just for context here, one of the bills that was signed. Essentially, if you do nothing, we do expect some of those renewable costs to start increasing in terms of the supply component that we do help to manage. But then, as a benefit, your electricity will continue to be cleaner and cleaner. The second bill that was signed was LD 1711. This amended our state's net energy billing legislation, which essentially establishes value for renewable energy that gets exported to the grid. In other words, it's not being consumed on your facility or at your site. It's energy that goes out to the grid. This does not look like we're going to be successful here. What about on the other end of that cable? Do you know anything about that? Just to make sure it's plugged in.
Sure, where the other end? Excuse me for 1 second.
Jenny,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know any Christmas songs?
I know lots of Christmas songs.
While they're looking at that, I'm going to give you some information.
It looks like it goes that way. You know what? We can
Is there another computer we can use?
I don't know. We've never used that one.
I would say no.
So I think what we'll do, the board that had a copy of your presentation, go back to the printed version. Yeah, I know we're in the initial stages, and so we need to go. It just disappears under the table after
Yeah.
that. Okay, so why don't we just go from yours and then.
Sounds like he's on the phone talking to someone.
Talking to Eric, probably.
So what I just passed up to you is a history of our electricity purchases, and also history of our actual usage. So you have both, from 2008 to present.
I'm just going to keep rolling here. Unless you tell me otherwise. So LD 1711 essentially establishes what is a fairly high value for renewable energy that gets put onto the electric grid. And this is under the net energy billing rules of LD 1711. That value, just for round numbers sake, is about 13 cents a kilowatt hour right now. So if you are a renewable energy generator, every kilowatt hour that you put on the grid under the net energy billing program can be compensated or paid through a credit issued by the utility at 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So we've been working, as Bill alluded to, our company was founded in this is our 20th year anniversary, so we've been in business for a while, and we've been kind of tracking this legislation for a while. We've also been working in Massachusetts where similar programs were rolled out 6 or 7 years ago now. And we've helped some of the largest public entities in Massachusetts build hundreds of megawatts of solar under similar programs that we've seen come out this spring in Maine. And just one example, a client of ours, the University of Massachusetts, has saved over $14 million since they got into one of the early programs. And so we've kind of seen the progression of this throughout Massachusetts and then to Rhode Island. Interestingly, Governor Mills hired the fellow that now is the head of the Energy Office, Governor Energy Office, Dan Burgess, out of Massachusetts, and lo and behold, a lot of this policy ended up looking a lot like what was rolled out to the south of us. So the message is we've kind of seen this before, and we were prepared for it, and have approached a variety of our customers, our largest and some small as well, public and private institutions. We've got about 24 clients that range from University of Maine, the City of Portland, LL Bean, Pratt & Whitney, all the Maine community colleges, and I think we have a handful of public school districts included as well. And what we did was aggregate the potential load, electric load of these consumers, and we went out to bid to see what sort of cost it would take to build enough solar projects to meet the load of this customer group. And we started that back in September. We issued the RFP. RSU 14 was included and listed as a participant. At the end of October, we received all of the bids. We had 18 different solar developers, some from the state of Maine, the majority of them from either New England or the rest of the country, that bid 118 different projects throughout the state of Maine into this RFP. And over the course of the past couple of months, we've been essentially trying to massage the group of projects and evaluate those based on, first of all, price, the cost to construct these projects, and second of all, the likelihood that they will get built. One of the big challenges here in Maine is, everyone is rushed into the state to chase this legislation. The distribution grids, the distribution infrastructure, we have, let's say there's several hundred different distribution networks that throughout Central Maine Power's service territory. Each one of those distribution networks really can only take one of the solar projects that is being proposed. They're all being proposed at the maximum size allowed under this new legislation, which is 5 megawatts or 5,000 kilowatts in scale. It's a solar facility that'll cover approximately 20 to 25 acres of land, just to give you an order of magnitude. And so, as these developers come in and try to find sites where they can lease the property that may have already maybe cleared land, a hay field or a farm field, or lightly forested property with access to, or along a state road with three-phase distribution lines readily accessible. They've been going around the state, and if you are a landowner, you maybe have heard from a landowner who's heard from one of these developers, they're locking down the best sites to develop these projects and essentially trying to get in line to connect them to the CMP distribution network. And that's one of the biggest key components here, is where you stand in position in the interconnection queue, because once you're in line, essentially the first guy in line, if he can build the project, once he's in, the rest of the guys are out. So this all ties back to how we're evaluating the projects, but we're looking at price, we're looking at the likelihood that they can get interconnected and built. So in part, we're evaluating the financial stability of the developer themselves, and there's a few other kind of lesser evaluation criteria that we're doing now, and is intended to select, I think, what will be somewhere around 28 different 5 megawatt solar projects. We actually may have some small hydro that gets included as well. But ultimately, the way we envision over the course of the next month this playing out is that we will make awards to these solar developers. RSU 14 has essentially a percentage allocation of all of the total project. So let's just say for demonstration purposes, the load that that the district could take, in essence, is about 1% of the total group. Well, what that'll look like is RSU 14 owning 1% of all of the project's output, or each of the project's output, so that you own, in essence, a portion of these 28 different solar or hydro projects, which is pretty neat. So that's what we're doing. Probably what may be important to you is, why would you do this? Why would we do this now? Or what's the benefit, both economic and environmental? And so I'll try and get to that a little bit. Again, this program, the net energy billing program, as it's set up now, I alluded to it, it's pretty lucrative, and probably more lucrative than is really needed to spur solar development throughout the state. It also has a cap to the program, where once there's a certain amount of solar subscribed, it's expected that the program will probably close or somehow get restructured. It's what we've seen elsewhere, where the first batch in is highly incentivized, and maybe the next tranche is slightly less than that. But that's one of the reasons we're recommending that people move quickly, is the program has a cap to it. The other reason is, we really think that the lowest cost projects to develop are going to get done first. As I alluded to, there's a certain amount of capacity on our distribution network. As you continue to build and build and build, there are more costs to interconnect these projects, upgrades to local distribution lines or substations, and perhaps higher leasing costs to get a good piece of property to develop one of these projects. So a third reason, there is a federal tax incentive that's available, not to you, obviously, as you have no federal tax liability, but these developers are able to capture that and sell the tax equity off. So the federal investment tax credit, the nearly 100% of the cost of these projects is eligible for that. And right now, these developers can monetize about 30% of their project costs in tax credits or tax avoidance, and pass that on to you. After the 31st of this year, that tax credit steps down to 26%, and after the end of 2020 steps down again, and so on. So there's a couple reasons why the timing is good. From an economic perspective, maybe most interesting to you folks is that the way the net energy billing credit has been defined, what we're expecting for credit rates from the electricity that's generated from these facilities is quite high with respect to or relation to the cost that it will take to develop these projects. So a couple of things that we know right now are this kind of the aggregate of these 28 projects, in order for the district to essentially buy in, at this 1% level, will cost order of magnitude, let's just say 9 cents a kilowatt hour to purchase the credits from these solar facilities. And the utility is going to issue you back, well, as it stands today, a credit that's close to 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So the relationship kind of flow here is you sign an agreement with a solar developer for 9 cents a kilowatt hour. Everything that gets generated, you pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour. They take that contract, finance, construct, own and operate that solar facility, put the electricity to the grid, and let's call the grid Central Maine Power, the local utility here. They, under LD 1711, I'm getting warmed up now. Under 1711, they're obligated to issue a credit to your utility bill, and the way that credit is defined, again, today that would be 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So you pay 9 and CMP issues you a credit at 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's good, right? Every kilowatt hour that gets generated, you're actually saving money. I'm going to need to pull up my notes to recall what the exact math here was. Maybe Bill has it handy in his mind, but I think conservatively we were initially hoping for a couple cents differential, which, based on your contribution level, would have been about $42,000 per year. For a 2 cents, if that credit rate, if you could receive the credit rate as it is today, it could be twice that amount in annual savings. And so that's like real money, like you're paying for the credits but receiving more in value. And so you probably want to say, okay, well, this sounds too good to be true. So what are the risks? And a couple of them we've talked about, and certainly with others as well, is legislative risk, where the political tides turn and a new governor comes in and attempts to overhaul the credit program. And we've seen that attempted in one other state, Nevada, a few years ago, and it roiled the financial markets and the participants in this program to such a great extent that eventually they just relinquished and essentially grandfathered the program, but closed it to new participants. And we think that's probably the worst case scenario here too, is that the energy billing program would get suspended but grandfathered. We think one of the valuable reasons to participate in this particular group is the minimization of political risk. Just to list some of the other folks in here, we have Auburn Public Schools, Bowdoin College, City of Augusta, City of Portland, South Portland, Colby, Falmouth School Department, Husson University, L.L. Bean, Maine Community Colleges, Maine General Hospital, Maine Maritime, Nestle Waters, New Balance, Pleasant River Lumber, Portland Water District, Pratt & Whitney, Pride Sports, RSU 14, Scarborough Schools, Jackson Laboratory, University of Maine, York County. And you know, we've seen in recent history a governor that's willing to kind of screw a couple of people like Statoil and university, but this diversity is politically near impossible to disrupt, you know, from a political perspective, in our opinion. So legislative risk is kind of how I would address that. The market risk, if you follow the logic here, this credit rate that I've described is indexed to the price of electricity as we pay it today. So in my example today, the credit rate's 13 cents. We have we have a purchase agreement at 9 cents. You know, if electricity prices dropped by 40 or 50%, you know, in essence, the credit would be worth less than you are paying out. And the way I describe this to Bill is that, you know, you guys are still buying electricity. There's nothing is going to be different about the way these schools buy electricity. And so if electricity prices drop 40%, great. Like, you guys are going to be paying 40% less on your utility bills. So, you know, that's one of the other major risks that we try to address here. I've just been rambling. So we talked about the economics. The other piece we haven't talked about is the environmental benefit, which also adds another economic opportunity. You know, this is something that, you know, the district can tout and market and use for education, and you know, all the right reasons, talk about how this reduces the district's carbon inventory. There's also a way to monetize the attributes that will be generated from this system, and I'll explain that a little bit more. For every 1,000 kilowatt hours generated, or a megawatt hour of electricity generated from these solar systems, there will be a renewable energy credit that's generated. And that credit has value within all of New England as a compliance, essentially a lot of generators need to buy these credits in order to be compliant in their state markets. And this is why I opened up with, you know, talking about our renewable portfolio standard, because, you know, if you're selling electricity in Maine, 40% of that now and 80% of that 10 years from now has to come from renewable energy. Well, what do you do if you're a gas-fired power plant in Maine? Well, you actually have to go out and buy credits from other facilities that are generating 100% renewable energy. And that's what this is, in essence, where, you know, this credit has value to those that are obligated to buy them, and you could very well choose to sell that each year, or you could sell it for a few years, or each year decide whether you sell that credit. And we assume that that might nearly double again the economic opportunity that I talked about earlier. That could be another, $50,000 or $60,000 per year in value if you choose to sell it. And what a lot of folks in your position are doing, and Bill will love me for saying this, we haven't talked about this, but creating some sort of fund that will that can be you take that money and apply it towards efficiency projects and conservation measures that otherwise wouldn't be done or couldn't be funded. There's a plug for your next round of projects. But you can do whatever, ultimately that credit, you can do whatever you want with it. You can essentially retire it and claim the carbon benefit, or sell it and use that money for whatever you choose. So, any questions?
I just want to add one thing.
Yeah, thanks.
One of the other real benefits of this project is off-site solar generation. So obviously, I could come to you and say, we want to put a solar field up here at RES, so we're going to cut the trees down behind the school and do all that, right? And that would be challenging in many different ways. We'd also be responsible for buying and maintaining this solar field. The great thing about this is that we're buying into this solar project, but we're not obligated to go out and maintain them. We're not going to have to make sure that, that where the land is taken care of. I mean, it'll be, I'm sure environmentally it'll be solid, but it's not going to be in our purview to maintain, take care of, and then plan to replace in 20 years when they need to be replaced or fixed when something falls on and breaks them. So that's a huge benefit. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to really go green, save some electricity, but also not have the liability of having to have that field ourselves. And unfortunately, I wish we had more land for our schools, but that isn't something we have a lot of space for. I'm not a huge proponent of putting them on the roofs, because eventually I got to get onto the roof and replace those, and making those projects much harder. So I think it's another real upside for the project, is it's not on our property. So I guess with this, we have questions that you may have about the project. Again, timing-wise, we're looking at probably having this be an agenda item in one of our January meetings right off, because we're going to be looking at deciding to have a board motion to go ahead and execute the contract to be part of the consortium. That's kind of really the next step coming right up. And it'll probably be early in January, because I know they're looking to get things all lined up as soon as possible.
I have a question. You mentioned that something ended at the end of this year. That's in a week or 2 weeks?
Yep, the federal investment tax
Okay.
credit. Yep.
So, but we're not making, are we a part of this consortium now? So we're making the decision in January, and
You are at this point included in the consortium.
Right.
The process is at a point where we're looking for the final commitments from each of the participants. So we haven't, obviously, nobody has authorized or executed on anything on your behalf, any form of a commitment. That's what we're looking for over the next month here.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Marge?
If we decided to go forward and we did vote for it, when would we start to see the benefits of that?
Yeah, great question. So obviously the credits, the agreement we envision the district signing is in essence a credit agreement. You don't take ownership of the power or the system, and only pay once you receive the credits from the utility. So in order for that to happen, the system needs to be online, and backing into that, most of the projects that bid in, these 28, some of them are already operating today, the couple of the small hydro facilities. So those could conceivably flow in 2020, but the bulk of the projects are in development and not likely going to be online until the end of next year, 2020. So realistically, credits flowing in the first part of 2021. And I had advised, Bill, maybe conservatively, not to put anything in your budget until, that next next June there. So the FY22, I guess.
Great, thanks.
Just want to also share with the board, before there's like additional questions, is that we are being represented as we look at contracts by our law firm, Drummond Woodsum. Aga Dixon is the lead attorney for us. Also, Drummond Woodsum has an in-house solar expert who has been working on some of the contract pieces. We also signed paperwork this week. It feels like a year this week. But we've also signed paperwork that we're being co-represented with the City of Auburn, and we're sharing legal costs for the review of this. And I know Drummond Woodsum has also reached out to some of its other partners, and they'll be working with us because, again, we want to make sure that this is the best deal for the district. The other component is this is a lengthy commitment. This is a 20-year commitment. And so we want to make sure that prior to going into that commitment that, you know, we're all clear. Here are the pluses and minuses, because 20 years from now, probably none of us will be around this table, and another board will be dealing with this and working through this, and we want to make sure that this will be a good deal for years to come.
Mark, in line with what you just said, it's a 20-year contract, but are there periods of time where it comes up for review? You know, it's like after 3 years you review it, blah, 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 or is it just, this is it, you got it, see you in 20 years?
There's components within the contract that if the developer does not meet certain load requirements, certain production requirements, that there's an opportunity for the district to part ways. Again, I'm not an attorney, and that's why we rely upon our law firm to go through those contracts, and again, to make sure that whatever is negotiated for a final piece is going to be in the best interest of the district. But given the investment that companies are going to be making to build all of these facilities, it would be nice to, you know, they have to make the commitment. It'd be nice to make sure that we're set and secure as we go into that, because again, these are not inexpensive things to build. And I think probably all of you have read articles at some point with City of Portland talking about its green initiative. I'm assuming this is the project in which they're working to become a part with.
They are part of the consortium, yeah.
And so it is an opportunity. I mean, I would like to see, at some point, like to take a field trip, if we do go forward with this, to see our 1%, to see what part. Maybe we could hang an eagle and a roadrunner in that one little section. But it would be nice to see that. But again, we have not made we've made a commitment to be part of the RFP, to be part of this consortium, and honestly, as a district, I can't think of a better group of businesses that we would want to have our name associated with as far as moving into a project like this. I mean, we do have some of the largest businesses in the state of Maine represented in this consortium, but it's a long-term commitment, so we'll make sure that it's a good one and make sure that the board has all the information they need to make that decision on that commitment.
Anybody else? Thank you very much for coming
Thank
out.
you for your time.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Sorry for the-
Great information.
Yeah, we can unplug that now.
But Charlie, the board does have a
Sorry.
copy of your presentation.
Oh,
They
good.
received
Yes,
it in their
we do.
packet
We
Friday,
got it,
so
right.
if
It
there
didn't change.
if there are questions that come up, though, if you could send those to Bill, and
Please.
then we will also have Charlie. And also, Charlie, while he's here, I know Bill said at the beginning, but Competitive Energy Services have been a great partner to RSU 14. They have always had our best interest in whether it be bidding out our fuel oil, our electricity. If you look at the sheets that Bill handed out, back in 2008, we were paying a little over 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and right now we're locked in till 23 at just over 6 cents. And so those type of savings, working with, I think Fielding Oil right now has our oil contract locking us in middle of January last year at a very favorable market rate. So they have been a great partner to us and have saved us a considerable amount of money that can go into classrooms over the years. So again, Charlie, just want to say thank you for, I've never had a chance, we've always emailed, but I've never had a chance to meet you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's really great for us because they're watching the markets. I try to watch the markets on the energy side, and I watch things, but I don't have the time or the inside knowledge. So we'll get a phone call from Charlie saying the rates are looking good. We really need to think about locking in, and it's been great because We really saved some money. In fact, we're hoping to expand that to look at our propane purchase next year. That's again something that we're using more of. But if we can find a way to spend less money on utilities, I'm all for it. And just so you know, the prices you have there, that's the supply side or the energy side. It doesn't include the delivery side. It doesn't include things like demand charges and capacity charges too as well, but that is the supply side, just so you're aware of that. So, great. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve an appointment, please?
I move to approve the following appointments for the 2019-2020 school year. Julie Clark, art teacher at the Manchester School, with a BA, step 21, salary of $62,523 a year, which will be prorated this year for $29,177.40.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Okay. All those in favor? No opposed? Could I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy IGDJ?
I move to approve the second reading of revised policy IGDJ, athletic/co-curricular eligibility policy.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? No. Okay. Could we have the superintendent's report, please?
Sure. It feels like we've been talking about bus arms a lot this fall, but we're talking a lot about bus arms, and I'm happy to report, and I think we're going to try to have the group of students in front of you in January, but the Odyssey Angels group, which is part of the Odyssey of the Mind group, and a group of other students that are together, have now raised enough for 5 stop arms, a little over
Great.
$10,000. In addition, the community group, I think, has also reached the point where they're close to 5 stop arms, and tomorrow night on Wyndham's version of Speak Out with Representative Patrick Corey, they're going to be doing a whole session on bus arms and what that is. So we have 23 buses that are out on the roads every day, and then we obviously have our spare pool. But I think at this point, with the 3 that the RSU has purchased, that 13 buses will be equipped. And if you remember, none of these were budgeted. In fact, the opportunity to even put these on here weren't even part of state statute when we finished our budget last year. So we'll have over half the fleet, and they're going, and they're hoping to do as many as possible by the end of the year. It has been a wonderful, wonderful concert season. Throughout the past couple of weeks, both Christine and I have had a chance to go and visit, I think, every school's concert. Some nights we've had to divide and conquer because we've had schools in Raymond and schools in Wyndham that have been doing concerts on the same night. But it has been absolutely wonderful to see our kids' talent showcase, and it's been nice to see the community out supporting our kids. And it really, really has been just a wonderful, wonderful early winter season, and early winter concert season. Our winter athletic season's up and running, and we've got a number of students who are, participating and playing for their schools, and really are enjoying the opportunities that they have. So it's been a great, great session, and just want to say to everyone who's out there watching, have a great holiday. Friday's our last day. Schools will be closed on Monday, and central office will be closed on Tuesday and Wednesday for Christmas Eve and for Christmas.
Thank you. Okay, it's now time for the board roundtable. If anybody has anything? No? Okay. I'll take a motion to go into executive session, please.
I move to enter into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A, and not to return to regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? We are adjourned.